Welcome back to the NC Baptist Podcast. We are on mission together. This is the On Mission Together podcast, and I'm your host, Todd Unzicker, your Executive Director-Treasurer of the Baptist State Convention of North Carolina, coming to you from the NC Baptist Studio in Cary, North Carolina. We are excited that you are listening and joining us again, and especially today as we kick off the Annie Armstrong Week of Prayer for North American Church Planting. We have our good friend, Dr. Kevin Ezell from Send Network and North American Mission Board. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
My privilege. You kidding? Anything I can connect with in North Carolina, I want to do, except for Duke. Other than that, yes. I'm all in.
Yeah, we have great universities right around like 20 minutes from where I'm sitting, Kevin.
Yeah.
Great schools like UNC and NC State, Meredith, and North Carolina Central, and then, like we like to say, we also have Duke.
No, we're incredibly grateful for the partnership and thankful for you. Always look forward to being with you.
Yeah, well, thanks. Kevin, you've been in this role, 11 years, 12
14.
years? 14. Wow, time flies. Maybe you just celebrate 12 of the 14.
Yeah,
but
that's right. The first three weren't that fun. Yeah.
But really, Kevin, I think when people think about you and when they think about the North American Mission Board, they think a sending culture. They think about church planting and how do we get churches that plant churches for everyone. Right. Just right out of the chute. What makes a good sending culture in a church?
Sure. I think it all goes back to Acts 13. Church of Antioch sent out Barnabas and Paul. In verse 3, it says they sent them away, or they sent them off. And for a church to understand, it's about engaging a city, making disciples, and then planting a church. It's not just about building up a church or growing a church. It's about reaching a city and having a passion to do that. When you really have that, it's not about how many people you collect inside. It's more about the people you're sending out on mission. I say this all the time. It's not the seating capacity of a church that determines its success. It's the sending capacity. And that means in the DNA, they understand it's about, we want to send out our very best.
Yeah. I was an AMS for a while, and like a lot of AMSs, I'd have the Monday morning pastor breakfast. And you can probably guess what the first question those guys asked each other every Monday morning.
How many did you have?
How many did you have? Or the way they said it in the Florida Panhandle was, "What'd you run?"
Yeah.
And I thought, imagine how we could really impact lostness in North America if one of the first questions was, "How many did you send last year?"
Yeah. You're a big sports fan too. So often they talk about a coach, but they talk about his coaching tree. Like, this is all the people who come from that coach, and they talk about whether it's Saban, or they may throw in a Georgia coach, or
let's talk Kirby Smart and his coaching tree.
Well, they just like, look, here's all the coaches that came from that guy, and that's the true legacy. And to me, that's what churches need to look at. Is it's all about who you're sending out. I was in a church Sunday, and they bragged. They said, who was baptized here? We were a church plant of a church plant of a church plant of. They told me the guy. Well, I called him on that Sunday and said, look, I'm preaching in a church that you're responsible for, 2 generations away. And that's the way it should be.
Right.
I've got 8 grandkids. I'm thankful for the 6 kids I have. But man, if we want to talk, I get 10 minutes free. I want to talk about my grandkids. I really love. Right. We need to get pastors where they're as excited about their kids and grandkids as they are about themselves,
Yeah. Let's stay with Acts 13 and that anonymity a little bit, because you were preaching at a church. I always found it. Are you ready to dust off your theology degrees? I both have them. So let's dust those off here for a second. What's amazing in that Acts 13 is the church in Antioch, everybody knows is kind of like the sending church in the New Testament, right? What's fascinating about it is we don't really know who was the pastor who planted that church. It says actually some brothers.
Right.
And I love the anonymity there, but everybody knows the church in Antioch was the sending church.
Yeah. No, it reminds me of that passage in Mark where we don't know the names of the guys who carried the paralytic. It was just 4 of them, or it didn't say it. But I love that because it's just all about getting them to Jesus. That was all it's about.
Yeah. And talking about this sending, last week in North Carolina was our annual disciple making conference.
Yeah.
And Kevin, I hope this, and you can pass this on to those around the country who are listening. we had over 1,700 people there.
Mm.
And the theme of it was disciple making through multiplication. And so it was all about sending, and to see and it was actually at a location further than we'd had in the past, from the central part of the state, yet we had the record number of attendance. I can see this movement. Are you seeing that around the country?
Well, not those kind of, I mean, that's, as you know, I hope your people understand how incredible that is. Look, that many Southern Baptists do not get together unless there's a concert or food. All right. And so for you to do that, I mean, that's incredible. And there's something to be celebrated, but no, we really are. We're seeing people lean in, and that's where, you're finally starting to change the DNA when people are leaning in and wanting to be multiplied and talking about who they can send out and developing a pipeline. We really feel like the SBC is positioned to double and possibly triple the amount of church plants we have in the next 7 years, just because of the pipeline. It took us a while to get that pipeline developed, and to have this year we'll have just shy of 1,000 new churches in the SBC, whether it's be plant or replant or campuses. But we think we can easily get up to 2,000 church plants in the next 5 to 7 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, I know that in North Carolina, our partnership with you guys and Send and See, our church planting, we saw 48 in 2024, which was 121% of the goal that was set about 2 years ago. And so we really are seeing that movement here in North Carolina, and we thank the North American Mission Board and what all of the churches around the country are doing with that. But let me ask this question, because there's going to be a lot of these listeners. You've been doing this for 14 years. You've seen a real transformation and a culture being built. If I'm a pastor at a normative church, he's faithful. Their church gives more every single year. He loves Jesus. He believes this. He would amen when we talk about Acts 13. What would you tell him a first step would be to be a part of this kind of sending movement?
There's not one church in North Carolina or any other state that cannot be a part of the process. Not one. And the easy gimme step is to pray, but pray very specifically. They can pray specifically for a region, or we prefer a state. Obviously, you're praying for North Carolina, but it's really helpful. As well as I do, you have churches planting churches in North Carolina, but they're also planting them in New York and other states.
That's right.
So to so love and adopt a state that you make it its own. We have some churches in Texas that adopted Utah, and they wear, Utah jazz stuff and University of Utah stuff. Their deacon, they got our elders had all that stuff on. And because they wanted their people to know, look, we are all in, and we're going to pray for Utah specifically and celebrate it like we celebrate Texas or whatever state they're from. And so praying, that didn't cost you anything. And we can give you the stories, we can give you the videos, give your people to help them to really have a heart for planning. I really think it starts with prayer, but intentional prayer, not just God bless the planners. We're thankful for those, but specific areas, specific cities, and we can give you missionaries in those places or specific planners if you want to pray for them.
Yep, and we've got a lot of those resources at ncbaptist.org. This is the kickoff week for the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering Week of Prayer. Kevin, what we say in North Carolina is that prayer is our primary strategy, not our last resort.
Right.
And we want to pray that God will raise up more harvesters. Kevin, I'm sure you know this. We're the third fastest growing state in the country.
Right.
And we did some demographic studies recently, and they're saying that our state is going to double in size from where it was in 1995, that it will in 2035. And so we're seeing just such an influx, is that we have to multiply.
Right.
Because we're not going to reach our state with a handful of mega churches. It's going to take churches of all types and everybody. And so that's what I'm praying. What's something you're really praying for this week in this week of prayer?
Yeah, we always are praying for our missionaries, but that people would really have a heart and just understand the importance of multiplication. So often, if they live in a place, especially in the South, because they see so many churches necessarily, they don't see the need or the sense of urgency that we need to have. We're really going to reach. The clock is ticking. We're not guaranteed forever here. We've got to make the very most of our time. And so my prayer is that people have a sense of urgency about the mission. And that's why I believe in even Paul when he said in Philippians 3, you got to forget the things of the past and lean in, lean forward. And so often we stare and gaze at the trophy cases of the past, the good things, and even some of the bad things. We don't focus on, man, what God's going to do next. And so I'm thankful for where we are. We're better than we were, but we have a lot to do.
Yep. Well, talking about what's coming up next, we talk church planting because I know that North Carolina Baptist and I know the North American Mission Board, we are all about the gospel. So talk about what's coming up on March 16th and the 316. What's coming up that day?
Yeah, 316 on 316. It's really about, hey, look, this is a coordinated effort where we could all focus on John 3:16 on March 16th. And it's a time to make sure that we're preaching a very intentional evangelism emphasis on March 16th, which ironically correlates with the Fill the Tank Sunday that you guys
Right.
were the ones that launched it for all of North America.
Right. Well, and that's what we are telling folks is that a month later on April 27th, which is the week after Easter, is Fill the Tank Sunday, which is what we in North Carolina and now other states doing is just to tell every single state, hey, just commit to fill your tank on this day. That believing from this day to that day that the Lord is going to save many.
Right.
And this can be add to your Wednesday night prayer services. Let's start praying for the lost with more intentionality, like we already talked about. Let's start inviting people, and maybe on 316 that weekend of really exegeting and explaining God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever would believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life. And then imagine a month later celebrating the resurrection, and a week after that, fill the tank. It gets me excited for the spring.
No, absolutely. I had the craziest thing happen Sunday, and I thought, man, I wish every Southern Baptist could see this. I preached in a church in Florida. All right, it happened to be, I don't mean to name drop, but Hulk Hogan was baptized in this church. So I got to meet him before the service. It was really nice. His name's Terry. And I said, hey, Terry, it's really nice to meet you. He goes, hey, I want you to meet. He introduced a friend to me. He goes, I met him yesterday, and it's his first day in church today. He brought somebody with him that day to church. And I thought, my Lord, if every Southern Baptist would have that intentionality of going through the grocery, bumping into somebody, and looking for somebody they could bring with them on a Sunday, that'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, we are excited about 316 on 316 coming up. I know North Carolina Baptist churches are looking forward to being a part of that. Then Fill the Tank Sunday the next month, the week after Easter. But let's not forget, this is the Annie Armstrong Easter offering. How does generosity fuel the mission here?
It's amazing to me. When people talk about the Southern Baptist Convention, one thing you guys, they're loving, generous people. 99.9% of Southern Baptists are good, solid, generous, Bible-believing, mission-minded people. And especially in North Carolina, man, I tell you this all the time, but North Carolina Baptists give 10% of the Annie offering. And the same with Lottie. I mean, you're the largest giving state in all of Southern Baptist. And so incredibly grateful for that. And they have a track record of that. And that's what enables us to plant the churches that we do. We feel like we can plant 100 more churches next year. Well, to do that, that's a lot of extra resources. We're thankful Annie's been going up every year, but so have the church plants. And the amounts that we give them now is more than it used to be. And so they're really the lifeblood. Over 50% of NAM's resources come from the Annie Armstrong. It's the same way the IMB, over 50% with Lottie Bennett. So it's very critical, and I cannot say thank you enough to North Carolina pastors for encouraging their people to give.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for this state. This started, under Brother Milton, my predecessor, and our good friend, his leadership. I heard recently that 19 of the last 20 years, North Carolina Baptist churches led the way in the giving of the Annie Armstrong Easter offering.
Yeah, and 100% of it goes to the field. And that's the beauty of it. I wish I had time to tell you about the planter I just talked to, got on the phone with in Long Beach, California, and he baptized 6, and the one in Maine that just went to 2 services, and another. I mean, if you could just see where I sit, and all over the country they don't realize it, but because every church in North Carolina, as they've given to Annie, have been a part of planning over 11,000 churches since 2010, and 1/3 of the SBC will have been planted by 2030. 1/3 will have been planted by 2010. all because they give. They had a part in every one of those.
Wow, that's super encouraging. Well, Kevin, thanks for joining us today. We are praying here in North Carolina. We're on mission together with you guys. We join and celebrate all of the churches across the country that be listening to this podcast, who are taking part in the week of prayer, and we're gearing up for 316 on 316, and also who be planning to fill the tank. May this be, Kevin, my prayer that maybe this be the best harvest we have seen these next couple months, and we are glad to do it with you and a partnership with you, and thankful for the generosity of everybody. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this week to the podcast. I hope that prayer is your primary strategy, not your last resort. That you are praying for the planters who are laboring right now, and that you would pray that God would raise up more, and maybe somebody listening right now would pray, "Here am I, Lord, send me." And they be that next planter. And if you would like to know more, you can go to ncbaptist.org. If you want resources on the Annie Armstrong Easter offering, you can go to anniearmstrong.org. And thank you for filling in. Kevin, thanks again for coming.
No, honored always, man. Appreciate the partnership and your friendship, man. It means a lot.
Likewise. So listen to more episodes on the On Mission Together podcast at ncbaptist.org/podcast. And let's go be on mission together.
We're calling churches across North Carolina to fill the tank on April 27th. Will you join us? As NC Baptists, reaching the lost is central to who we are. We fill the tank because we believe God will move, and we get ready to see lives changed and new believers baptized. Will your church be ready? Let's pray for the lost. Share the good news of Jesus. And on April 27th, or any upcoming Sunday, let's celebrate what only God can do through baptism. Sign up now at fillthetanknc.org.
Thank you for joining us today. Because of your generosity to NC Baptist, this podcast, along with other helpful resources, are made available for you. Learn more by visiting ncbaptist.org/give.